We cannot possibly understand Western culture and the history of Western culture without the Bible.
Professor Francesca Stavrakopoulou is the head of theology and religion at the University of Exeter in the UK. She's a renowned biblical scholar who's devoted her life to looking for the historical evidence of one of the world's most important books.
But I'm not a fundamentalist who takes every word of the Bible as fact. I think the truth is much more interesting.
Would you please welcome Francesca Stavrakopoulou? I can't believe I stumbled on Francesca. What are the odds of that? So we're just going to talk about the Bible,
yeah.
And I want to learn more about it. First off, who wrote it and when?
Some people think that Moses wrote it, which he didn't, because Moses didn't exist. So then you have to think, well, who did write it? And it's basically a collection of different authors from centuries and centuries. So probably with the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament, you're talking about at least 500 years in the making. With the New Testament, you're talking about probably 150 to 200 years in the making. But basically, it was all written by men with daddy issues.
So here's the thing. There are people right now writing complaint letters just on the first answer to the first question. Right, so I'm wondering, why is taking a historical approach to the Bible so controversial?
It's controversial because when you do take a historical approach, so look at the archaeological evidence for sort of events or people described in the Bible, it's very hard to find corroborating evidence to support the biblical claims about the past. So once you start saying, did this actually happen or not? So was Jonah swallowed by a big fish? Obviously, no, he wasn't swallowed by a big fish. Was there an exodus from Egypt? No, there wasn't an exodus. So once you start doing that, then you have to start doubting the credibility of all the other claims that the Bible makes. And that's why people get annoyed, because for some reason, people like to think that the Bible's true.
Right. No, people like heaps like to think that the Bible
really
is true.
Yeah.
They really. We'll get back. One of the first things you said was Moses wasn't real.
Yeah.
Right. Now we've just had Pesach, the celebration of freedom of the Jews.
Yeah.
Led by Moses to freedom. Yeah. And you're saying he wasn't real.
No, he probably wasn't. So there's a lot about him that's really interesting. So in his tradition, the traditions that are told about him, so Moses is an Egyptian name. The Hebrew Bible writers kind of say this name is derived from a Hebrew verb, meaning to draw out of the water. So when he was a baby and kind of set into the basket of reeds. But actually... it's...
So far, story checks out.
So far, it checks out, except that Moses himself, there's no evidence for him being a historical figure, like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of that. It's all made up. But he's drawn on different sorts of religious figures that probably were around very broadly in the culture. So he's like a bit of a magician. So, you know, he's like, woo, look at this star.
Yeah, we all like a good magician, but some people want to believe it's more than that. How do you know? Like, when you say none of that was real, it was all made up, how do you know?
Because dating the texts, you can see, in terms of the Hebrew words that are used, in terms of some of the details, like references to camels. There were no camels in that part of the world at that time. That kind of stuff.
You lied to me, Cecil B. DeMille.
But yeah, that kind of detail tells you that these texts were written many centuries after the events that they're describing. And then you can see the ideology. Well, why are they telling the story about escape from slavery and oppression and movement into a promised land? It's because the writers themselves were in their own kind of slavery and oppression, but in Babylon in the 6th century BCE, not in Egypt, hundreds and hundreds of years before that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. But you love the Bible.
Yeah, I do.
Why? Like, if you like go, well, that's not real, he's not a guy.
Yeah.
Why do you love it so much?
Because it's like the most amazing collection of ancient literature. It's like reading, it's like going into a time capsule. It's like time travelling, and you get to read all about these different sorts of myths and legends. Like, you know, one of the most important myths in the Old Testament Hebrew Bible is the idea that God had to fight a massive sea dragon to create the world. Now, you don't get that in Genesis. You get hints of it in Genesis, but you do get it.
Hang on, what are the hints?
The hints?
What? No, like, I'm just curious. Like, it's like, ixnay on the agon tray. Like, what was it? Like, what's...
So one of the hints is, on the such and such a day when God was making the world, he made the great sea monsters. And the word that they don't actually do that in the Bible, but the word that they use is the ancient word for this, it's tanin, which is this ancient, mythical, watery, ferocious chaos monster, like a sea dragon. But then we read all about his actual battle with the sea dragon in the book of Isaiah and in the book of Job and in the Psalms. So it's all there. It's just that everyone kind of privileges the beginning of the book because most people get bored by the time they get to, like, Leviticus. And they don't bother reading
There's just so much admin in Leviticus.
I know,
it's like, this is what you do with mildew. Put it in a drawer, see if it grows. Call a rabbi, burn your house down. Like, it's a...
But detail's important in that kind of thing, you know, particularly.
Well, mildew it still plagues us today. So I've been to Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, and it's amazing when the places mentioned in the Bible are in front of you. Like, I stood in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the fact that these are real places starts to make you feel like this is more true. Why does it become more compelling? Because it's in a place that exists.
Whether you're, you know, an atheist like me or you're religious like other people, the Bible has played such a massive role in our lives, right from when we're kids, that somehow to be in these places, I think you can't but help. Just feel engaged and excited and curious. And to go somewhere like Jerusalem, where obviously the Bible still matters, because as we know, Jerusalem is still the kind of the heart, the kind of the central place for Judaism, Christianity, and obviously Islam as well. And we know the political tensions, we see it on the news all the time. You can't but help feel impacted by that.
Now, you've already pointed out a few things that weren't real in the Bible.
Yeah.
What was real? Like, I believe the Garden of Eden, you believe, was a real place.
Well, I believe it's based on a real place. It's based on the Jerusalem temple that was supposedly built by Solomon and was destroyed, and we think probably historically it was destroyed by the Babylonians in the 6th century BCE. And the temple itself is meant to be like the dwelling place of the god. And like humans, God wants a nice house and he wants a nice garden. And it's the meeting place between the heavenly realm and the earthly realm. And so it was filled with trees, and it was a very sensory experience going into the temple. There were nice smells of incense, and that's what the story of Eden is based on. The idea is that human beings, or a king in this case, was in a very privileged position like that with God. He messes up, he gets expelled from the garden, so he's like thrown out of the temple, and that's when the temple historically is destroyed and the kings of Israel no longer exist.
So if you were editing the Bible, what would you take out? Is there anything that you'd remove?
New Testament? No.
That's pretty controversial. Surely not all of the New Testament.
Okay, Paul. Anything written by St. Paul.
Just all of Paul?
Yes.
That's like taking Paul out of the Beatles. He was pretty important. No, because Paul wrote a huge amount of the New Testament.
Yeah.
He was, by and large, the founder of the church.
He is the founder of Christianity.
So what have you got against Paul?
He goes on and on and on.
It is a bit like he took everything he wrote. Like, I wrote some letters to the Corinthians. I'll put that in.
Yeah.
Did the Corinthians ever write back?
You know, we don't know if they did. Maybe. But he's so down on humanity. He's just really kind of like, oh, you humans, you're so bad, you're so sinful. And it's like, oh, come on. We're not that bad. The Hebrew Bible, everyone thinks that the God of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, is the kind of like vengeful, hateful, angry one who's like kicking ass all the time. And that the God of the New Testament is kind of like, oh, I love you. But it's not like that at all. The God of the New Testament, he's gone. He's like not interested at all in humanity. Like, he's not really present in the New Testament. It's all about Jesus.
Because that's the thing. Like, early on in the Bible, God rocks up. Like, God is literally there, and he goes, "Hey, Abraham, do this. Moses, here's some 10 Commandments.
Exactly.
They'll be useful." But he's talking directly to people. And then it becomes people saying, "Oh, you just missed him. God was here, and he said this." And then by the end of it, it's like, I know a guy who spoke to a dude who saw.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to be honest, you know, Paul started off as a Jew, like Jesus. Jesus was a Jew. I think he'd be spinning in his grave if he knew what was really going on in his name now. He was a Jew. He was a very passionate Jewish man. You know, like John the Baptist was probably sort of Jesus' initial teacher. And like Jesus kind of then used this breakaway movement. You know, it's kind of like, you know, some pop group, like the Beatles, like kind of splitting up, and like John going off with Yoko. It's problematic.
I'm sorry, that is the most controversial thing I've ever heard anyone say in my life, is that the career of Jesus is like John teaming up with Yoko.
It kind of is a bit.
That is extraordinary. But here's the thing, OK, like, you're an atheist.
Yeah.
But you're passionate about the Bible.
Yeah.
But you can understand that people could be quite angry at all of the things that you're saying right now.
People are always angry with me because I'm an atheist, but because I'm a woman, because I'm a professor.
What is harder in your line of work, being an atheist or a woman?
I think being a woman is still harder than being an atheist. Because just because I'm an atheist, because people can't say to me, because most people in my field, most academics are Christian or Jewish, so I say to them, I haven't got the same emotional investment in these texts as you do, but nonetheless, I still think these texts are really important. They are the absolute bedrock of Western cultural preferences and values. And so it's important, it's responsible, I think, to critique those ideas and say where they come from and how kind of representative should this be? How important should these texts be? The Bible is a cultural icon, whether we like it or not, whether we believe in it or not. So that's why it's important to study it. But I think I've got one up on most other scholars because I'm not invested in it. It's not going to, I mean, my soul's not going to hell or to heaven because I don't believe in a soul and I don't believe in hell and I don't believe in...
Do you ever worry that you might hurt people by saying what you think is the factual truth about the Bible?
No, because I don't think, I'm not like some kind of Richard Dawkins figure, who's obviously the most famous atheist in the world, probably. Like, he's
the John Lennon of atheism. Yeah, you're right, yeah.
But he's rude to people. He's unkind to people, I think. And he tells people that they're stupid. I don't think that people that have faith or belief are stupid at all. That's their choice. And I recognise that there are lots of different ways of being in the world. So at the same time, so I try and be polite to people. I'll say what I think. I'll say, yeah, well, I don't think Moses existed. Other scholars would disagree with me. A lot of scholars would agree with me. But I don't want to be rude about it, so I respect other people because I'm a human being and I like people. You believe what you want to believe, that's completely fine. But your Bible belongs to me as well. You know, it belongs to all of us. It's like had this huge impact globally. So it's not just your text, it's mine as well. So I've got every right to study it.
These books shape the world more than any other books have ever done. How do you think we're using them wrong?
Well, our gender politics, for a start, is completely biblically based. The idea that there are just two genders, that they are made by God and in the image of God, that idea has massively damaged the environment because human beings think that they're like the best and that they're at the top of like kind of the apex of creation and therefore that they can go around you kind of raping and pillaging the world and its resources and its animals. So, you know, those are just two examples, sexism, or patriarchy, and environmental damage that the Bible's responsible for.
Can I just ask you to fact check something for me very quickly, okay? Because I have this Noah's Ark toy. All right, so here's the Ark, right?
Yeah,
There's the Ark there. That's Noah, happy.
Can I start straight away? White dude.
Right.
Yeah.
So Noah was not white.
No.
Okay.
Okay, carry on.
So okay. Well, I think that raises an obvious question about the elephants. So it's two elephants. There we go, 2 by 2. We have 2 rhino, a bit more textbook. 2 by 2, and this is the big one. We have 2 lions, 2 by 2.
Yes.
I'm just wondering how successful would Noah have been repopulating the world with 2 male lions?
Yeah.
Does that say that this is historically inaccurate or Noah was a bit sketchy on animal husbandry?
Either he was sketchy or he didn't really get the right instructions from God. I'd be more inclined to blame God.
God was very busy. He's going, look, I'm busy making a flood, grab some lions. I don't have time to do everything.
This is why I love the Bible, honestly.
Well, we loved having you here to talk about it. Thank you so much for your time. Would you please thank Francesca Stavrokopoulou? Thank you so much.